Hello students, welcome back to your English literature class. In your previous session, you had done the explanation of pages 105 till 107 of the lesson The Sound Machine by Roald Dahl. Today, we shall continue the same. By the end of this video, you will be able to understand the meanings of difficult words as used in the context, the related figures of speech. You will be able to understand how Klausner tests his invention, and you will be able to understand Klausner's love for nature. In the previous lesson, you learnt that Klausner tested his machine in his garden and found that it could register sounds emitted by the plants when his neighbor, Mrs. Saunders, cut the rose stems in a garden. Klausner tried to explain the experiment and its results to Mrs. Saunders, but she ran back into her house. He tried to learn more from the incident. Klausner got a small white daisy and pulled it both upwards and sideways. His action caused the stem to snap. He heard a soft, high-pitched shriek. He repeated the action with another daisy. The same thing happened, and he knew it was a shriek. But he was not sure if the shriek was an expression of pain. It appeared to him just like a cry, which was neutral and without any emotion. So, let us continue with the reading of next pages. Open your Echoes textbook at page number 108. He stood up and removed the earphones. It was getting dark, and he could see pricks of light shining in the windows of the houses all around him. Carefully, he picked up the black box from the table, carried it into the shed, and put it on the workbench. Then he went out, locked the door behind him, and walked up to the house. Now, what is the black box, children? It is the machine that Klausner has invented. So, Klausner removed the earphones and looked at the pinpricks of light shining in the windows of the houses all around him. Noticing that it was getting dark outside, he collected the machine, replaced it on the workbench, exited the shed, locked the door, and retired to his home. Let's proceed further. The next morning, Klausner was up as soon as it was light. He dressed and went straight to the shed. He picked up the machine and carried it outside, clasping it to his chest with both hands, walking unsteadily under its weight. He went past the house, out through the front gate, and across the road to the park. There he paused and looked around him. Then he went on until he came to a large tree, a beech tree, and he placed the machine on the ground close to the trunk of the tree. Quickly he went back to the house and got an axe from the coal cellar and carried it across the road into the park. He put the axe on the ground beside the tree. Now children, what is the meaning of clasping? It means holding someone or something firmly in hands. Unsteadily, in a way that involves moving slightly from side to side as if you might fall. Beech. Beech is a tree with a smooth grey trunk and small nuts or the wood from its tree. Cellar is an underground room used for storing things. Now, the next day, Klausner woke up at dawn, got dressed, and headed to the shed. He lifted the machine into his arms, carried it through the door, past the house, through the fence gate, across the road, and into the park across the way. He took a moment to pause and reflect, looking around, until he spotted a big beech tree under which he delicately set the machine close to the trunk. He headed back home to get an axe and returned to the park, placing the axe delicately on the ground beside the tree. Then he looked around him again, peering nervously through his thick glasses in every direction. There was no one about. It was 6 in the morning. Now, children, what is the meaning of peering? Peering means looking carefully or with difficulty. So he peered cautiously around. Why did he peer cautiously around? He did so in order to see if anyone was watching him. So it was early in the morning, there was nobody yet to watch him. It was just 6 o'clock in the morning. He put the earphones on his head and switched on the machine. He listened for a moment to the faint, familiar humming sound. Then he picked up the axe, took a stance with his legs wide apart, and swung the axe as hard as he could at the base of the tree trunk. The blade cut deep into the wood and stuck there, and at the instant of impact, he heard a most extraordinary noise in the earphones. Familiar, known well. Took a stance, took a position. Impact, a marked effect or influence. A most extraordinary means a very unusual or very remarkable thing. So Klausner put on his earphones. He switched on the machine and heard the same humming sound. Then he bent over to pick up an axe. He spread his legs wide and swung into the base of the tree with as much force as his small little body could gather. The blade went deep and remained stuck. And in that instant, he heard the most amazing sound he or anyone had ever heard. Now, children, what kind of sound was it? It was a most extraordinary sound. It was a new noise, unlike any he had heard before. A harsh, noteless, enormous noise, a growling, low-pitched, screaming sound, not quick and short like the noise of the roses, but drawn out like a sob, lasting for fully a minute, loudest at the moment when the axe struck, fading gradually, fainter and fainter until it was gone. Harsh means unpleasant. Growling, making a low, rough sound, usually in anger. Gradually, slowly over a period of time. Now, children, what kind of sound was it? It was not a high-pitched shriek, but a guttural growl, a harsh, noteless, low-pitched screaming sound that wasn't over in the blink of an eye, but was long and drawn out, lasting for perhaps an entire minute, and attaining loudest volume at the moment the axe made contact before gradually fainting into nothingness. Here, the author gives the quality of human beings to the trees. The trees are making a harsh, noteless, enormous noise, a low-pitched screaming sound. So, the author makes use of personification here. Let's proceed. Klausner stared in horror at the place where the blade of the axe had sunk into the wood flesh of the tree. Then gently he took the axe handle, worked the blade loose, and threw the thing to the ground. Stared, gazed. So, children, Klausner was horrified at the sight of the gash he had made in the trunk. He gazed at the place where the axe had sunk into the flesh of the tree. See the words the author has used, not the tree trunk, the flesh of the tree. He gently pulled out the axe and threw it on the ground. With his fingers, he touched the gash that the axe had made into the wood, touching the edges of the gash, trying to press them together to close the wound. And he kept saying, "Tree, oh tree, I'm sorry, but it will heal. It will heal fine." Gash, a long deep cut on the skin. Klausner was unable to stop himself from touching the damage. Scared by the pain he might have inflicted on the tree, he tried to press the edges of gash to close the wound, and he apologized to the beech tree, insisting that the damage was not permanent and that the wound would heal. Children, in these lines, we come to know that Klausner is a very sensitive man. For a while he stood there, with his hands upon the trunk of the great tree. Then suddenly he turned away and hurried off out of the park, across the road, through the front gate, and back into his house. After staying with the tree for some time, Klausner rushed back home. And what did he do over there? He went to the telephone, consulted the book, dialed a number, and waited. He held the receiver tightly in his left hand and tapped the table impatiently with his right. He heard the telephone buzzing at the other end, and then the click of a lifted receiver and a man's voice, a sleepy voice saying, "Hello, yes." Consulted means referred for information to. Here we are referring to a book. Tapped, hit something gently. So children, Klausner rushed back home and he referred to a book. It is the book where he has noted down the phone numbers. So he dialed a number. Now whose number was it? It was the number of Dr. Scott. He dialed the number and waited. While he was waiting, he was very nervous, and in his nervousness and excitedness, he was tapping the table impatiently with his right hand. So, Dr. Scott picked up the phone and in a sleepy voice said, "Hello." Now, why is the voice sleepy? Because it is 6 o'clock in the morning. He must be sleeping when Klausner rang him up. "Dr. Scott," he said. "Yes, speaking." "Dr. Scott, you must come at once, quickly, please." "Who is it speaking?" "Klausner here. And you remember what I told you last night about my experience with sound and how I hoped I might?" Yes, of course. But what's the matter? Are you ill?" "No, I'm not ill, but—" "It's 6:30 in the morning," the doctor said, "and you call me, but you're not ill?" So Klausner wanted somebody other than him to confirm his hypothesis that the plants also make some kind of sound. And for this, he requested the doctor to come. Now, doctor was really shocked. Klausner was fine and still he wanted the doctor to come to him at 6 o'clock in the morning. "Please come quickly. I want someone to hear it. It's driving me mad. I can't believe it." So Klausner begged the doctor to come over quickly and hear the sound he had just heard claiming that it was driving him mad. It was making him crazy. The doctor heard the frantic, almost hysterical note in the man's voice, the same note he was used to hearing in the voices of people who called up and said, "There's been an accident, come quickly." He said slowly, "You really want me to get out of bed and come over now?" "Yes, now, at once, please." "All right then, I'll come." Frantic means unable to control emotions. Hysterical, unable to control your feelings or behavior because you are extremely frightened, angry, or excited, etc. Now, children, here Klausner was really excited. He was also frightened. The doctor could judge these emotions in the voice of Klausner. So, while he was unhappy at being awoken so early, the doctor recognized his voice, the tone of voice as one signifying a true emergency. So he agreed to come right away. Klausner sat down beside the telephone and waited. He tried to remember what the shriek of the tree had sounded like, but he couldn't. He could remember only that it had been enormous and frightful, and that it had made him feel sick with horror. He tried to imagine what sort of noise a human would make if he had to stand anchored to the ground while someone deliberately swung a small sharp thing at his leg so that the blade cut in deep and wedged itself in the cut. Same sort of noise perhaps? No, quite different. The noise of the tree was worse than any known human noise because of that frightening, toneless, throatless quality. Shriek means a short, loud, high cry. Enormous, extremely large or great. Frightful, shocking or extremely unpleasant. Anchored, secured firmly in position. Deliberately, intentionally. Wedged, put something into a very small or narrow space so that it cannot move easily. So as Klausner was waiting for Dr. Scott to arrive, his mind wandered to the sound that the tree made. He could only recall that the sound given out by the tree was enormous and frightful. This filled him with fear. He tried to imagine a human being tied firmly to the ground so that he could not move. He wondered what kind of sound would that tied human being make if someone would intentionally strike him with a sharp thing having a sharp blade, and the blade remained stuck in that cut. The sound of human being would be different from the sound made by the tree, as the sound made by the tree had frightening, toneless, and throatless quality. He began to wonder about other living things, and he thought immediately of a field of wheat standing up straight and yellow and alive, with the mower going through it, cutting the stems, 500 stems a second, every second. Oh my God, what would that noise be like? 500 wheat plants screaming together, and every second another 500 being cut and screaming. And no, he thought, I do not want to go to a wheat field with my machine. I would never eat bread after that. Klausner wondered what kind of a frightening sound would be made when 500 stems of wheat would be cut by a mower simultaneously. He felt if he would hear such a screaming sound, he would never be able to eat bread anymore. Why bread, children? Because bread is made of wheat. Klausner did not want to go to a wheat field with his machine. The cries of 500 stems being cut at a second would make him go mad. But what about potatoes and cabbages and carrots and onions? And what about apples? Ah, no, apples are all right. They fall off naturally when they are ripe. Apples are all right if you let them fall off instead of tearing them from the tree branch. But not vegetables. Not a potato, for example. A potato would surely shriek. So would a carrot and an onion and a cabbage. Shriek means shout. Klausner then imagined the pain which vegetables like potatoes, cabbage, carrot, and onions have to undergo when they are cut from the roots. There was no problem in eating apples because when they are ripe, they fall off naturally. You do not have to necessarily pick the apples off the branches. But a potato has to be uprooted, so it would definitely shriek. The same is the case with carrot, onion, and cabbage. So, children, again, all these thoughts show that Klausner is a very sensitive man who loves nature and can feel the pain of the plants. He heard the click of the front gate latch and he jumped up and went out and saw the tall doctor coming down the patch, little black bag in hand. Latch, a device for keeping a door or gate closed. Patch, a part or area distinct from that about it. It looks different from the area around it. So as Klausner heard the click of the latch of the front gate, he quickly went out and saw that the doctor was coming. He was carrying a black bag in his hand. "Well," the doctor said, "well, what's all the trouble?" "Come with me, doctor. I want you to hear it. I called you because you are the only one I've told. It's over the road, in the park. Will you come now?" Dr. Scott asked Klausner what the matter was. Then Klausner told him that he wanted him to hear something, as he was the only one whom he had told about his theory and experiment. He then asked him to come with him to the park. So children, this brings us to the end of our today's lesson. Your homework for today is to reread the pages 108 and 110 that we have done today and read and plan pages 111 till 113. Thank you.